before, and that was like one of my favorite things that they had. And they also had this dressing, miso dressing. You know what miso is? It's a fermented soybean. And they miso soup. When you go to a Japanese restaurant, the soup that you get is miso soup. It's water, and they put little tofu pieces in it. And sometimes there might be some little pieces of seaweed. Miso. And anyway, this is just oil blended up with miso, onion, and red. You have something to drink, Shankara?
It'd be nice if you made me something hot to drink. That would be sweet.
Oh, like on a grill? I have, yeah. Can I serve you?
Yeah, sure. Not
Wait.
on grill. I make them on skillet.
Okay, no, I haven't had it on steel.
They are really good. And I make kebabs.
Was that something?
Yes.
Just a couple of minutes. So if you wanted, you could put your burger inside the, and you could put avocado in there with it. You could put mustard or mayonnaise or anything. These are
Hello, hello.
sweet potato
Hari Om.
chips.
Hari Om, Brother Shankar, Hari Om. How are you?
Quite well, actually.
Very good.
Seem to have improved in the last day quite
Well,
remarkably,
that
actually.
one was supposed to be-
That's good.
Yes, very good.
that one is yours.
Yeah.
And you can have a second one if you want. Oh, it's just there was only one really huge one. That's like the hugest one.
Namaste, Brother Shankara.
Namaste, dear. Namaste. So good to see you. All right. Well, I'm going to run off and I'll be back in a few minutes.
Okay.
We just joined early.
Good. Oh, bless your heart. What kind of tea is that in there?
Apple cinnamon.
Oh, wonderful.
And I was gonna close this door, but.
Yeah, but I'll do it myself because I'm going to run into the restroom.
I don't know.
So if you want mayonnaise or anything, this is miso dressing. Whatever. Mustard, ketchup. You heard me. Those are sweet potato carrot. Looking for the ketchup? Like that would be good. It might be tasty on here. Yeah.
And you have mayonnaise also?
You want mayonnaise?
Don't look for it, just to see it.
Here it is, right here.
Okay, oh boy. Too many ingredients. I mean, size, right?
You need a spoon for the salsa.
Sides. In one spoon, yeah. Put in a bit of
Oh, they are size. They are what?
that dips, right?
Dips.
Whatever, you call it whatever you want, things to have inside. Condiments.
Yes.
Hello, Prabha. Naveen.
How are you?
Pretty good.
Good, good to see you.
Me too. I'm so glad we're able to do this.
Right, right.
Really nice.
Right. How's your gardening coming along?
I'm allergic to pollen, so I couldn't go to fully bloom. I forgot to send you the picture. I will. It's a fully, all the flowers in the front are all in full bloom. So it's really nice. It's just the pollen. I can't go outside. So I wear the mask and go pick up the mail and come back in.
Right.
Yeah, it's a beautiful season, isn't it?
Right.
Huh? They do. You know miso?
I have seen miso, it's not this color, it was, I remember I used to buy miso in a packet and.
Yeah, this is white miso.
I've not seen white.
I was telling Aditya miso is what they make soup with in
Yeah.
Japanese
Yeah,
restaurants. Very nice. Mm-hmm.
It's not just new watch, it's just big deal.
How many steps have you had today? I had over 15,000 yesterday. Because I took 2 walks. You want to walk to Henderson Park sometime?
Where is that?
Look it up on the thing. It's down Henderson Road. But it's got a lake, big lake, and walking trails in the forest. I can go show it to you if you want.
13,000.
Oh, that's good.
Good. Wow.
Make sure it's still good. Just give it a sniff. It smells okay. Yeah, isn't that the one that Rita brought?
So everyone, you guys are doing that.
What's the option? Good. And I would have put cheese on it, but it has cheese in it. You can see how it's turned out. You want some chips? Deborah? Yeah. Good.
Something different.
Yeah.
I forgot to put the salt and pepper on it. Still tastes okay.
Yeah,
Salt and pepper. It's supposed to have pepper too. But we mix it up ahead of time. It says it's better to let it sit overnight. I just let it sit part of the day. I mixed it up around lunchtime and let it sit. And I forgot.
but it is solid.
Mhm.
It's a bread.
Cheese. On the bread. I need to put pepper on the list.
Yeah. There is some nut in it.
Uh-huh.
What is that?
sunflower seeds.
I love minutes too, Sheila.
Maybe. It has egg in it.
Maybe without egg. I heard.
Probably
Looks like big.
vegan eggs.
Okay, I'll see you in an hour or so. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening, Brother Shankara.
Hello, Haima.
Huh.
Namaste.
Namaste.
So it's creeping up on 8 o'clock, but we'll wait until about 8:02 to begin, just so that if there's any latecomers, they can, or not so much late, but just people who join right at 8 o'clock or a little after. So it sure is looking like spring out there.
Nice.
Warm, everything is leafing out,
Yes.
flowering out, pollening out.
Yep. Pollen season is back.
Yeah. Anybody got any news they'd like to report to the group? Anything good, bad, or indifferent?
Audio on.
Hmm?
Well, Brother Shankara, I have been going through the notes that I have taken off and on to the Athens class and to our Sunday classes, and I'm finding some gems that you have said. Also have questions, but I think I will have to ask you separately.
Well, you can wait till after this class if you like, and just stay after everyone else goes if you like. That'll work fine.
Brother Shankar, I've got an abscessed tooth
Oh,
that's giving me some pain, and there's no dentist that'll work on your teeth at this
I
time.
know.
no, there won't. They won't. I know.
Yeah, and it's abscessed.
Oh my! Have you got some? Have you got some cloves and some of the home remedies that are useful for that?
Yeah, well, I've got antibiotics that I'm taking now, and
Uh-huh.
Catherine's been a real big help with providing food and kindness. She's
Well,
been a
sure.
real friend.
Well, there are home remedies for these toothaches, so you might see if there's anything that'll be of any use to you.
Yeah.
I'm real
Garlic
sorry to hear it.
helps.
What's that? Garlic?
Garlic helps. If you take a bulb of garlic, take the skin out,
Yeah.
and then just put it where the toothache is. Just bite it and then let that juice go inside. It gives a little temporary. Garlic is powerful. I believe back in those days when we didn't have antibiotics, garlic was antibiotic.
Oh, I'll have to try that.
Yeah, just try it. Worth trying right now. Anything, try.
Okay. Yeah, I'll have to try that for sure.
Yeah,
Yes, that's
just a temporary relief.
Yeah.
Right.
All
Daily,
right.
you do it like 2-3 times a day, and then slowly the pain
Okay.
will lessen, and maybe later on you can go.
Yeah.
It's
Well,
time
thank
to
you for
begin.
that information. Appreciate it.
Sure.
It's
You
time to begin.
Yes.
Thank you for the sweet information flowing back and forth. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavai Tejasvina Vaditamastu Mavid Vishavai Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May the Divine Being look over us lovingly as a mother and father. May the Divine Being support and nourish us as a mother and father. May we have the strength and skill to study together the art of spirituality. May no misunderstandings arise amongst us. Om, peace, peace, peace be unto us and to all beings everywhere. So welcome everyone. We're just about to start the chapter, the third chapter of the Gita. Before we do, just a little review, especially about the gunas. Because without some recollection of what is meant by the gunas and how they function, it will be very hard to understand what Krishna is going to tell us. The gunas are three. They are said to be the instruments of the divine to manifest creation, according to the Sankhya way of looking at things. The three gunas are tamas, rajas, and sattva. Tamas is the concealing power. Tamas is the power of inertia, of stability, of in the stolid sense, stolidity, stubbornness. But without it, there would be no existence. There has to be persistence of material objects. So tamas is very important. So none of these are just black or white. So tamas, the concealing power, that is to say, because of its inertia, because of its stolidity, it conceals from us the truth. The way to overcome tamas is through rajas, the projecting power. Projecting power, think of tamas as a block of granite. Think of rajas as that block of granite under sufficient heat and pressure, it becomes flowing lava. So we have the fountains of lava projecting from volcanoes and from ruptures in the earth. So this is Rajas. It's represented in human feelings by passion, by lust, by aggression, and by, in a positive sense, the ability to get things done, the determination to project something new into the world, or to sustain something that exists through effort. So Rajas also has its very positive aspects. Again, you can say it's the lever, but without tamas as the fulcrum, there would be no existence. So the two of them together, and so the concealing power, the projecting power, and then sattva, the revealing power. If there were no sunlight, there would be no life. This would just be a block of cinder circling a dead sun, the earth we live on. So sattva is the sunlight, the gentle sunlight that encourages the seed to grow. And we can think of it in human feelings as contentment, as a kind of mild ecstasy, bliss that comes with spiritual practice. So the concealing power, the projecting power, the revealing power, these are the three powers that universe, or Mahat, the great cause, uses to manifest Jagat, the universe. So before we go on, are there any questions about that? Because we need to get that flat. We need to get that clear before we go on. Anything from anyone?
Can you tell me what page you're starting on?
Dear heart, I can't. It's chapter 3 of the Bhagavad Gita,
Okay.
Karma Yoga.
Okay. Thanks.
Page 49, Cindy.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
So my, or one explanation about the,
Please speak a little louder, please.
sorry, one explanation that I've heard about the Gunas were that like sattva is the balance of tamas and rajas. Is that correct, or is it like more of a separate entity?
No, it's not a balance of the two. It is something altogether. You may become balanced by manifesting sattva in your life. And so you may be able to balance the energies of rajas and sattva, rajas and tamas, by the manifestation of sattva. But you're not, it's not in itself. No, these are three separate energies, three separate vibrational realities that are the instruments for projecting or creating reality as we experience it.
Thank you.
Brother Shankara, what is Mahat again?
Mahat?
Yes.
Mahat is the great cause. If you remember that little diagram that's in the cosmology of the Gita at the back of the book, out of Prakriti arises Mahat. Prakriti is the undifferentiated energy, the possibility of creation. It is the potential for everything. Out of that arises Mahat, the great cause. From that arises Buddhi, the ability to tell one thing from another. From that, in a dissension, in a descent, then there is that which asks, who is recognizing this and that? And so we have the ahamkara. There is only one eye maker. It reflects itself in us. Again, if you follow that diagram, you see that the buddhi and the ahamkara are reflected in everything that comes below it. These are the 24 cosmic principles. And so we have these, everything that we experience is a reflection of Mahat Buddhi Ahamkara, as it differentiates first in the subtle realm and then in the physical or gross realm.
Thank you.
Anything else before we go ahead? Okay, that was good. I'm glad that business has been clarified. and don't hesitate as we go along. Remember, this is a class, not a lecture. So don't hesitate to interrupt. Just break in, and because it's really not good for us to go forging ahead and leave someone with misunderstanding, because this is a building block process, particularly the first 6 chapters of the Gita, very much a building block process. So don't, if you have questions, if you have uncertainty, stop us and ask, so that whatever you need is clear to you before we go on and build on top of that. So without any further comment or question, which is always welcome, we'll go ahead with chapter 3 of the Gita. And this is the chapter that, of course, Krishna didn't call it this. It's called Karma Yoga. It's his description to Arjuna of Karma Yoga. It starts with Arjuna asking a question. But Krishna, if you consider knowledge of Brahman superior to any sort of action, why are you telling me to do these terrible deeds? Your statements seem to contradict each other. They confuse my mind. Whoever it is that's making that noise, could you mute yourself just for? There's quite a bit of noise coming from someone. You're welcome, but if you could just mute until you want to ask a question or say something. Arjuna goes on, your statements seem to contradict each other. They confuse my mind. Tell me one definite way of reaching the highest good. Sri Krishna, I have already told you that in this world, aspirants may find enlightenment by 2 different paths. For the contemplative is the path of knowledge. For the active is the path of selfless action. Freedom from activity is never achieved by abstaining from action. Nobody can become perfect by merely ceasing to act. In fact, nobody can ever rest from his activity, even for a moment. All are helplessly forced to act by the gunas. A man who renounces certain physical actions, but still lets his mind dwell on the object of his sensual desire, is deceiving himself. He can only be called a hypocrite. Now, we all know exactly what that's pointing to. We have active desires, we have lusts, and simply by abstaining from those actions, if you still are not in control of your mind, and so your mind still dwells on those actions, even though you're not physically performing them, Sri Krishna says, you're deceiving yourself. You can only be called a hypocrite. The truly admirable man controls his senses by the power of his will. All his actions are disinterested. Now, this is a very profound and provocative words. All his actions are disinterested. That means they are not selfish. They are the truly admirable person is tuning out selfishness. So their actions, though they may be acting in the same way that you see other people, you may be going to the office and doing your work just as everyone else is going to, these days, not going to the office, but doing your work just as everyone else is doing their work. But you may have a totally different frame of reference for it. You may have the frame of reference of karma yoga, so that your actions are actually far more effective and far more powerful than those of others who are acting from self-interest. So that the actions of a truly admirable person are disinterested. All are directed along the path to union with Brahman. So he's answering Arjuna's question somewhat elliptically. He said, Arjuna is saying, how can you tell me to do these terrible deeds? And Sri Krishna is telling them, you must do them in a disinterested fashion. So that you're not doing them for yourself or your family, or you're doing them because that is what it is your task to do. What you're really focusing your attention on is your path to union with Brahman. So he is answering Arjuna's question. It's just a bit elliptical. Activity is better than inertia. Act, but with self-control. Now notice he doesn't say react. He says act. If our mind is calm and we're stimulated, the stimulus enters our minds, but we don't react according to our samskaras and our vasanas, our mental impressions and our habits. We wait and see, after the stimulus has died away, what is the best way to respond to this. So that this is action. So again, he's answering Arjuna's question, but subtly. Activity is better than inertia. Act, but with self-control. If you are lazy, you cannot even sustain your own body. And if you remember, Arjuna at one point in his exposition of how he's feeling and his thoughts, says, I'll just be a beggar wandering the streets. And so Sri Ramakrishna is also addressing that. If you are lazy, you cannot even sustain your own body. The world is imprisoned in its own activity. Notice the word imprisoned. This is our bondage. This is our feeling of lack of freedom. So the world is imprisoned in its own activity, except when actions are performed as worship of God. Now, this is an explicit instruction, but please understand that it is according to your own understanding of God, the God of your understanding. There is no cookie cutter God. So whatever God you are offering your actions to, if they're performed as worship of that God, that's perfect. As Krishna will address this in some detail in chapter 5. But so don't be worried about this God word as something that limits you. It doesn't. It is the God of your understanding, the God of your heart. The world is imprisoned in its own activity, except when actions are performed as worship of God. Therefore, you must perform every action sacramentally. Again, a very pregnant word, sacramentally. In the most sacred sense, you offer everything you're doing to the divine presence as you understand it. And that grows and grows and grows over time. Therefore, you must perform every action sacramentally and be free from all attachments to results. Now, this is the ideal. Of course, we are not that way in the beginning. In the beginning, we take a stand for that. We say, I'm going to learn how to be free from attachment to results. But in the beginning, we will react. Our samskaras, our vasanas, will produce these reactions to success and failure, to people opposing us, and so on and so forth, that later on are immaterial to us. We're indifferent to it. But so, therefore, you must perform every action sacramentally and be free from all attachments to results. Again, he's answering Arjuna's question. How can you tell me to do these terrible deeds? Because you are unattached from the results of these terrible deeds. The terrible deeds are in the nature of this righteous war you are to fight. So yes, people will die, terrible things will happen, suffering will occur, but there is no attachment. If you approach this in the right way, in the way that is sacramentally, then none of the results of those terrible deeds will attach themselves to you. Now there's this, as Swami Prabhavananda and Christopher Isherwood pointed out, there are times when they translated this as poetry. And now there's this very poetic passage. In the beginning, the Lord of beings created all men, to each his duty. Do this, he said, and you shall prosper. Duty well done fulfills desire, like Kamadhenu, the wish fulfiller. Now, what Krishna is doing is not quoting from, but paraphrasing the Vedas. In the beginning, each person, by the station of their birth, they had a duty. And all they had to do was do that duty. And so he goes on to say, doing of duty honors the devas. The devas are those that are the instruments of Mother's creation. They are the ones who actually operate the gunas. they're the doers of and the sustainers of creation. Doing of duty honors the devas. To you, the devas in turn will be gracious. Each honoring other, man reaches the highest. So this is this very simple formula. Don't work for yourself. Offer everything sacramentally. Think of it as being offered to the divine presence in the form of their instrumentality, the devas, their instrumentalities. To you, the devas in turn will be gracious. Each honoring other, man reaches the highest. Now, all of us who are present here tonight have in some way actually done this, whether we've done it consciously or subconsciously, we're doing this. Otherwise, we wouldn't be the kind of person who is able to be here tonight. So don't think of this as something you're not already doing. You are in some way doing this. Otherwise, the devas would not be gracious to you. So you're a good way, you're a good league you're a good few leagues down the road toward the highest. already. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here this evening. Please the Devas. Your prayer will be granted. Please the Devas. Your prayer will be granted, like Kamadhenu, the wish fulfiller. But he who enjoys the Deva's bounty, showing no thanks, he thieves from the Devas. Now, this is very early on in the Gita. This is Krishna saying, this is the foundation. Be in relationship with universe sacramentally. Understand that there are powers that are creating the reality you experience, and deal with them, honor them, offer to them. And he now goes on to explain in specific what he means. Pious people eat what the gods leave over after the offering. What does this mean? It means when you have food, first you offer it to the Devas, or to Sri Ramakrishna as the Lord of all creation, and the Devas as well, or Jesus Christ, or whoever is at the center of your spiritual yearning, your chosen ideal. But you take that food after it is offered. So pious people eat what is left over after the offering. Thus, they are sinless. They haven't missed the mark. They're on the mark. But those ungodly, cooking good food for the greed of their stomachs, the Sanskrit really translates as bellies, but those ungodly, cooking good food for the greed of their stomachs, sin as they eat it. Now, again, we're going to hear something that comes from this frame of reference of the 24 cosmic principles. So this is not modern science, but it is certainly very clear what Krishna means. Food quickens the life spur. Food grows from rain. Food grows from the rainfall called down out of heaven by sacrifice offered. Sacrifice speaks through the act of the ritual. This is the ritual taught by the sacred scriptures that spring from the lips of the changeless. In other words, he is paraphrasing the Vedas and the Upanishads. So this is the relationship to have this. Give everything a Godward turn, as Swami Prabhavananda used to put it. Offer everything. Be in a relationship with universe that says, I am grateful for the life that you give me, the food that you give me. And so rather than just take it without acknowledging that gratitude, first I offer it to you. Know therefore that Brahman, the all-pervading, is dwelling forever within this ritual. And later on in the Gita, he actually says it, Om Brahmarpanam is all about that. Om Brahmarpanam says Brahman is the ritual, Brahman is the offering, Brahman is she or he who offers to the fire that is Brahman, he or she who sees Brahman in every action attains to Brahman. So know therefore that Brahman, the all-pervading, is dwelling forever within this ritual of offering. If a man plays no part in the acts thus appointed, if a person plays no part in the acts thus appointed, that living is evil. That person's joy is in lusting. Know this, O Prince, his life is for nothing. Now, is this a judgment? No, it's simply an observation. It means that that life will come to nothing. There will be very little, if any, progress toward the divine, unless you are in relationship with the divine. And so that person will pass from this life, and they'll experience the effects of they'll experience what they did that created pain and suffering in the world. And this is the first thing they'll experience, we're told, after they pass from the body. Then they'll pass on into heaven to experience the fruits of the merits, and then they'll take another body. This is what he means, his life is for nothing. But when a man has found delight and satisfaction and peace in the Atman, then he is no longer obliged to perform any kind of action. In other words, when you have established really and deeply that heart-to-heart relationship with the divine, there's no longer any need for any ritual. Why? Because it simply flows from you and flows the other direction constantly. If you want to know what I mean, read the testimony of the saints. You've heard me mention the book, Love Poems from God. Please, if you want to understand what is meant by something like this, that is satisfaction and peace in the Atman, what is meant by that, and then they're no longer obliged to perform any kind of action. Though they perform action, there's no obligation. They're simply in a dance, in a dance of love with the divine. That person has nothing to gain in this world by action, and nothing to lose by refraining from action. He is independent of everybody and everything. If you remember in the study of the Yoga Sutras, the goal of that yoga is Kaivalya, independence. And here it is, Krishna speaking. He is independent of everybody and everything. That doesn't mean you're off lonesome in a corner. No, just the opposite. It means you can give, and never, it isn't even a question of thinking about it. You can receive without any feeling of obligation or you just simply, you're independent. You give, you receive, you are in relationship with the divine. This is this delight in the Atman that Krishna is talking about. Now, Krishna goes back to being more specific in his answer to to Arjuna about his question. Do your duty always, but without attachment. That is how a man reaches the ultimate truth, by working without anxiety about results. This is the key, this is the heart of karma yoga. Do your duty always, but without attachment. That is how a man reaches the ultimate truth, by working without anxiety about results. In fact, Janaka was a great king, a realized soul. He was independent of everybody and everything. He lived in that state, and as a result was a most effective king, very greatly loved by his people, and very greatly sought after for his wisdom. In fact, Janaka and many others reached enlightenment simply because they did their duty in this spirit. Your motive in working, in other words, doing these terrible deeds, your motive in working should be to set others by your example on the path of duty. So he's telling Arjuna, you're a king, you're a kshatriya, you have a righteous war to fight. You must fight that war, otherwise other people will shirk their duty and everything will go to hell in a handbasket. So your motive in working, fighting, your motive in working should be to set others by your example on the path of duty. Whatever a great man does, ordinary people will imitate. They follow his example. Consider me. Now, this is one of those interesting passages where Krishna talks about himself. Consider me. I'm not bound by any sort of duty. He's master of the gunas. He is Lord of the universe. There's nothing that binds him to anything. Everything is being done out of his gracious love of humanity. That's why he comes to be the uplifter for us. Consider me. I'm not bound by any sort of duty. There is nothing in all the three worlds, waking, dreaming, dreamless sleep, waking consciousness, active subconsciousness, latent subconsciousness, or unconsciousness. That's what's meant by the three worlds. There is nothing in all the three worlds which I do not already possess, nothing I have yet to acquire. But I go on working nevertheless. If I did not continue to work unstintingly as I do, mankind would still follow me no matter where I led them. Suppose I were to stop, they would all be lost. The result, now, again, think in terms of the frame of reference we're talking about here. The result would be caste mixture and universal destruction. If you remember some paragraphs back, he talked about the Lord of creation gave to each his duty. And if they did that duty, they would prosper. This is a gesture toward the caste system. In the beginning, it was very benign. It was not, there was no primogeniture in it. In other words, you didn't inherit your caste in the sense that we think of now. You could move freely from one caste to another by the quality of your actions. But the caste mixture in Krishna's terms was people being all confused and not knowing what to do or how to do it, which was, we see this in our own lives around us right now. The ignorant work for the fruit of their action. The wise must also work. The ignorant work for the fruit of their action. The wise must work also without desire, pointing man's feet to the path of his duty. So he's telling Arjuna, don't slip out of your duty here. Do your duty. This is your dharma. This is your swadharma. This is so if you think you understood how things would get all mixed up, no, this is how things would get all mixed up if you don't do your duty. Let the wise beware, lest they bewilder the minds of the ignorant, hungry for action. Let them show by example how work is holy when the heart of the worker is fixed on the highest. And as I said, you can do your work however that work is configured. You can do that work in this spirit. You don't need to say anything to anyone about it. You simply do your work in that spirit. And what will happen, I've seen it, I continue to see it in the people that I know now. Those are the people who they're regarded as remarkable by those that they share a workplace with. And so they're thought highly of. There are also people, of course, who are jealous of them. This will always be the case because they don't understand how and why they behave the way they do and why they achieve the rewards that they achieve. But that is just part of the program, and there's no way to avoid it. But if you do your work where the heart of the worker, yourself, is fixed on the highest, that makes the work holy. And then Krishna says something that we must, if we're going to move on in the Gita and understand it, this is why I prefaced this by this explanation of the gunas. Every action is really performed by the gunas. So it's our delusion that we're working for results. It's our delusion when we have attachments and aversions. It's only delusion. Every action is really performed by the gunas. Man deluded by his egoism. What's egoism? Egoism is thinking that I am the I maker. I am the constructor. I am the one doing this. And this reflection of ahamkara in our being, this reflection of the one I maker, the one I. We think we're the doer. We think we are the ones performing the actions. And so that's what he means by egoism. Every action is really performed by the gunas. Man deluded by his egoism thinks, I am the doer, but he who has the true insight into the operations of the gunas and their various functions knows that when senses attach themselves to objects, gunas are merely attaching themselves to gunas. What does it mean, senses attach themselves to gunas? Our senses are outreaching. When senses attach themselves to something, they reach out and attach themselves to some object. Doesn't matter what it is. An object of desire, an object of aversion, simply an object out there, seeming to be out there. So someone who has true insight into the operations of the gunas, and this is a product of long contemplation, concentration, and meditation to come to this, some understanding of this. That true insight into the operation of the gunas and their various function, then you know that when the senses attach themselves to objects, gunas are merely attaching themselves to gunas. It is the play of this infinitely complex and ever-changing play of tamas, rajas, and sattva. So knowing this, that person with insight does not become attached to his actions, knowing that they're not your own in any case. I think I'd like to stop there and ask, are there any questions about what's been said? Krishna has really done an information dump here. He's told Arjuna that he has to act disinterestedly. He has to do his duty to be the leader that he is born to be. And he has to recognize, if he's going to shed his delusion, that he's not doing anything anyway. It's only the gunas performing the actions, and he is the witness to that. So is there any question?
Brother Shankara,
Yes, dear.
when you say gunas attached to gunas, is it always sattva attached to sattva, rajas to rajas, and
No, no,
tamas
no,
to,
no, 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 no,
you
no.
know?
No, no, Rajas will attach itself to tamas. Rajas will attach itself to sattva. Study a little bit that cosmology at the back of the cosmology section. And then if you're interested in really finding the answer to your question, look up Sankhya and see just how Sankhya means enumeration or counting. The sage Kapila and his followers, like Buddha and his followers, cut everything very fine and compartmentalized and figured everything out. Kapila and his followers figured out just exactly how everything is created by this much of this and by this much of that and by this much of the other. 1, 2, 3, tamas, rajas, and sattva. So then they cut it into such small increments. It'll remind you as you study it, it'll remind you of the periodic table of chemistry. You know, so much of this, so much of that, so much of this, compounded, it results in this. So chemistry just looks at reality in a different way, looking at all of the subdivisions. Sankhya would say those are simply subsets of, and those are yet this much of this much of that, this much of that, that you're compounding is a grosser form of the subtle form. So the gunas attaching themselves to gunas. No, it is this infinitely, and I mean infinitely, that this is what Kapila says, infinitely complex play of, and constantly changing and constantly evolving as the universe is evolving. I mean, the coronavirus didn't exist, and then it did exist. It was created out of a compound of the 3 gunas. So now we're experiencing the results of that. So very good question. But first read that cosmology at the back of the little cosmology section. And then if you want to understand more deeply, we can talk about where you might pursue Sankhya further. Anything or anybody else?
Yeah, Brother Shankara, this is Keith.
Yes, Keith.
I definitely want to go deeper into the gunas. I still don't quite get it even with the cosmology, so I need something.
Yes, like I said, it'll take some time of contemplation, concentration, and meditation before you begin to get a grasp of what it is. But we can definitely go into it further.
Okay, yeah, if you can give me some reading materials and where I can start looking at it, that'd be great.
Well, the first thing to do is read Swami Vivekananda's Raja Yoga. And then...
I'm reading that now.
Okay, good. All right. Well, then we can take it from there.
All right, thank you.
Oh, you bet, Keith. Anybody else?
Well, I'll go again.
Yes, please, Swam. This is a class. This is fine. Go ahead.
How do we know what is our swadharma?
I don't like to sound like a broken record, but it is a fact. You simply, through contemplation and concentration, look back over your life and see what brought me here. What are the desires that I have been working on fulfilling? These predominant desires that I have been working on fulfilling this is what brought me here. This is what brought me into another human birth. Within that is locked the secret of your swadharma. What is it that you're trying to achieve in this lifetime? And we can all find the answer. It used to be in the Vedic times, clear by the nature of your birth, the family that you were born into. Now that is still a clue for us, still very much a clue. What was the nature of the family that I was born into? And what were the forces that caused my parents to produce me? But it's not something that anyone else can answer for you. Your guru can give you clues. I would present this question to Swami Sarvadevananda if I were you. But even they will not be able to tell you, or but be willing to tell you precisely. It is for us to determine for ourselves. And we can tell a lot by what has happened to us in our lives and what it is that we have pursued. What have we pursued, and what has worked out for us and what has not worked out for us? As Krishna will say, you shouldn't be trying to follow somebody else's dharma. It's disaster. So what has worked out for us? What has not worked out for us? In other words, where are we deluding ourselves about what is appropriate for us? Very good question.
Thank you.
Anything else?
You say every action is really performed by the gunas.
Yes.
Does that mean it's all deterministic, like the forces of nature do all the actions and
Deterministic? No. Not us doing it? Yes. Properly seen, we are the witness. We are the witness to creation's play, creation's activities. Now, does that mean we don't have any responsibility? No. We have the responsibility to be in control of our mind, our senses, and our actions. Otherwise, we can never make any progress. Without that control, we will not make progress. And we can look around and see the people who do not. And we can see those people who have focused their actions and their intentions from their youth on some particular thing. You have a daughter of such a nature. And you see how successful she is. Now, she seems to be driven to it, doesn't she?
Absolutely.
Okay. This is both a grace and a great burden. So there's no doubt for her. But at some point, we can pray, she will become aware that she is the rider in this chariot. And it has its own momentum, and she will enjoy her life much more. Then the burdensomeness goes away. But the fact that it is the gunas doing it doesn't mean we don't have our duty, as Krishna says. We have our duty to control our mind, our senses, and our actions. This is why I say we really cannot understand what Krishna means by this until we spend some serious time in contemplation, concentration, and meditation on the gunas. Making that the object of your meditation. And to understand what's meant by that, it's described very nicely in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, particularly explained well for us now in this modern times in Swami Prabhavananda's book, How to Know God, how to do object-oriented meditation so that things open themselves to you. The meaning opens itself to you. Very good question, very good discussion. Anything more?
This is Haima, Brother Shankara.
Yes, Haima.
Can I make a comment in the
Of
karma
course
yoga
you may.
about the swadharma? I'm just thinking maybe this might link to that swadharma. Is working for work's sake is swadharma? There is a note here in Karma Yoga, work for work's sake. There are some who are really the salt of the earth in every country and who work for work's sake, who do not care for name or fame or even to go to heaven. Is that swadharma? It's a
that is the perfection of swadharma.
Swadharma, exactly.
It's the perfection of it.
Perfection.
But you can pursue your swadharma,
yes,
and not be disinterested in that way.
right.
Pablo Picasso
Mm-hmm.
was not disinterested.
Mm-hmm.
Pablo Picasso reveled in his fame and sported around and just enjoyed the hell out of himself. But clearly he was following his swadharma. He just exploded into the world of art and revolutionized the world of art. But, toward the end of his life, he began to be a bit more awakened. But, clearly he was pursuing his swadharma. This is why when Swami Nirakarnanda asked me, what one word defines for you a spiritual aspirant? I said, self-determined. They have looked into themselves and said, this is what I am, this is what I want, this is what I will do. Other people often call them selfish. No, from here, they are self-determined. They may or may not be generous. As Sri Ramakrishna said, there are some who, given a mango, will go off in a corner, eat it all by themselves, and carefully wipe the corners of their mouth so no one will know they had one. There are others who, quite genuinely and sincerely, given a mango, will say, oh, look, I have this wonderful mango, let's share it. Now, what's so interesting is Sri Ramakrishna did not judge either of those people. He also said that the rishis of old, didn't really care about other people at all. He said this, it's right in the gospel. They didn't care about others. They cared about their own progress. But if you approached them with a load of firewood and offered yourself as a student, they might have, as Don Juan Matus said, a gesture with you. This is good. Anything else?
This is Keith. I've got kind of a question. So
Yes.
You kind of going back to the guna. So you were talking about essentially, the part where we determine is, getting control of your mind, getting control of the senses. I'm assuming
And your actions.
And your actions. So I'm assuming as these things come more in line with, your dharma, does that give you more freedom from the gunas or control with the gunas? How does that relate
Well, it depends on what your intention is. You can become a master of the gunas. You can become, according to Patanjali, and he describes it very, very successfully in chapters 3 and 4 of the Yoga Sutra. You can become omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent. You can share that. Why? You are that. You are the divine being. But it is still a limitation. So you can become a master of the gunas. This is why some people are healers. Why some people who can do things that, and Vivekananda describes them in some detail in his talk, Powers of the Mind, which you can find online. You don't have to buy a book. Just Vivekananda, Powers of the Mind. People become quite amazing in what they can do. But it's psychic power. It's not spiritual power. So the thing to do is release yourself from all that ambition. But if that's not the bent of your nature, then as Ramakrishna said, go enjoy the world. I have no objection. But when you're sick of it, return to me. I have the cure. So we can become very powerful indeed. I mean, if you watch the Star Wars films were informed by the magnum opus of Joseph Campbell. He's the one who gave George Lucas the clues as to how to structure the Jedis and the people who controlled the Empire, those evil wizards who controlled the Empire. Darth Vader, Darth Sidious, and so on. And so all of that is there. Yes, you can become a Jedi Knight.
I'm more so meant, like, I guess freedom from it. If you weren't looking for psychic powers or anything like that, is overcoming the gunas in some kind of way required for any sense of kind of enlightenment? I'm assuming you'd have to.
Overcoming the gunas? No.
Yeah, that would be the wrong word for it.
Understanding the nature of the gunas.
Okay.
And being free from attachment or aversion to their actions and effects.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes sense. And that comes with more control of the mind, the senses, and right action.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
And it is a longitudinal process. It's something that we start on, and first we take a stand for it. This is what I'm going to do and become, and then slowly and slowly we live into that. We start out, as Swami Sridharananda said, we start out with the sense I am. When we begin to awaken, we get a sense I am and the divine presence is. After a while, that flips, and we say, this is where we've changed from I, me, mine to thou, thee, thine. We put it this way: the divine presence is, and I am. And when we finally come to the point where we have exhausted our play with the gunas, there is this realization: the divine presence is. And so this is the sequence according to Swami Sridharananda. I am, and the divine presence is. The divine presence is, and I am. The divine presence is. So that's the sequence. Anyone else? This is wonderful. Okay, well, it's after 9. Shall we wind it up?
Brother Shankara, this is Keith. I've got one last
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Hang on for 2 minutes after everybody hangs up. I got something really quick I want to ask you. I won't keep you long.
Okay, well, both you and Swayam can stick around if you like, if you don't
Okay.
mind listening to one another.
I don't mind at all.
Brother Shankara, I think let me write down my questions and talk to you another time.
Okay, that's fine. We can do a Zoom like this privately, you know. All you
Okay.
have to do is sign on to Zoom and send me an invitation. Let me know that it's happening, and I'll be here.
Okay, thank you, brother.
We can, and any of you, by the way, you can do that. Any of you, you know, you're signed on to Zoom, and so you have the capacity, you have the capability of starting a meeting, and all you have to do is let me know. I'd like to Zoom in and meet with you at such and such a time. Send me the invitation by email. I click on the link. Boom, we're together.
Great.
Everybody got that? And I welcome that, by the way.
Thank you.
Okay, here we
Thank
go.
you.
Okay, here we are with our closing chant. Oh, dearly beloved, a flower at your feet for each one who comes to your open door. A flower at your feet for each one who stands by your open door and says, come to me, offering to break this world's chain that binds us down to ignorance, suffering, and death. A flower at your feet for each one who takes the path that you have struck through this your jungle world. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Amen. Peace, peace. Peace be unto us and to all beings everywhere. So, it's been a joy to be with you.
Thank you.
And look forward to seeing whoever of you wishes to join us on Saturday. Saturday, we'll be discussing Swami Prabhavananda's talks as they're compiled in a book called Realizing God. And then on Sunday, which is Easter Sunday, there'll be a somewhat unusual Easter service, Easter talk. The title is Resurrection. So good night.
Thank you.
Good night, Brother Shankara. Thank you.
So Keith, you there?
I am. I was just waiting for everybody to sign off.
Okay. There they go.
There they go. All right. So I had kind of a weird experience, and just want to run it by you. So I'm doing my meditations, and so I tell you about the Kriya that I do that I got from Sadhguru.
Mm-hmm.
And so lately, when I'm doing that, the last part of it is you lay on your back, and you focus your attention to these 61 points across your body. Right? You go to all these different points. You start with between your eyebrows, and then throat, and you go all over the body.
Mm-hmm.
So it always kind of gets me, kind of really relaxed, and I start seeing kind of, my eyes are closed, I start seeing stuff like swirling of lights, and so a couple different things happened. One thing happened where like something showed up, and then a light shined behind it, and when it happened, I got this really this surge of like really peaceful energy.
Mm.
Then today, essentially a face popped up, and it didn't look like anything human. It was very calm, very relaxed. It looked, fine. Looks pleasant, not threatening at all, but like two of those popped up today. And so things like that are happening. Am I imagining something or
No, dear. Don't even think that. First of all, your imagination is not what you think it is. Your imagination is the divine creative impulse. So, but no, you are not imagining things. You are seeing. Now, because our minds have a limited palette for translating things into what we can experience. Like you say, it was a face, but it wasn't human. So something in your past has allowed you to see whatever it was that you saw. Something in your past lives is the way it's understood. But no, if everything seems fine, if everything seems benign, then allow it. But there are beings that will try to take possession of us. So there, you just need to have that sense that what are you experiencing, and if you begin to feel like there's anything whatsoever amiss, bring your attention immediately to your heart center and visualize whatever it is that you visualize in the way of the divine presence.
Gotcha. Okay.
But no, it is not your imagination. It is your there's so much more than we're taught as children to experience. This may have happened to you as a child. You may have had a friend. Particularly this will happen to us before we're 9 years old. We'll have a friend that is not in this physical world with us. And your parents, some parents, discourage their children. Oh, that's just your imagination, they say. Oh, don't. So they discourage us from being in contact with these beings. My son had a blue friend named something like Mikey. My wife could never really quite understand how my son was saying the name. It sounded something like Mikey or Micah. And you know, this was when he was 3 years old, and he used to regularly have conversations with this blue friend named Micah who looked like light. And so, you know, later on, my son has had other remarkable experiences and is a remarkable man of 55 now. So just believe in yourself, but if you begin to feel anything amiss, immediately go right to your heart center and visualize there the divine presence as you feel it and understand it.
Okay. Have you heard anything about using a certain type of candle to ward those type of beings off?
Say it again, please.
Have you ever heard of anything of using a certain type of candle to ward those type of beings off, the ones that are?
Well, there's all kinds of tactics that are used by some people. What you're talking about is something that I'm forgetting now what the Creole spiritual tradition is called. There's a lot of that. I mean, in New Orleans, there are shops just that are dedicated to this, all of that kind of thing. I forgot. But all of that is there. just you might want to just stick to Ramakrishna, and you seem to be headed in this direction.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Just stick to Ramakrishna, Vivekananda, and those. You know, when you're ready, let me put you in contact with Swami Sarvadevananda, because the power that you're looking for realization is available to you. And since you're sincere and genuine, then that will work for you. You know, people who are seeking other kinds of power, particularly those people who are seeking to control others, this is not their path.
All right.
There's no interest in that here.
No, I agree. All right. Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
All right.
I
So
will,
good to be talking with you.
good to be talking with you as well. I will probably request another Zoom meeting at some point once I get deeper into the yoga, Raja Yoga with Vivekananda.
Right.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Brother Shankara.
You bet, Keith.
All
So
right.
good to talk with you.
Good to talk with you as well.
Good night.
Good night.